Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining. This is Erik and Derek, Tiger Football Talk. I'm your host, Derek. We're just two Clemson football grads who love nothing more than to talk a little bit more about Clemson football each week. And thankfully, we had a game this week. We're talking about things to be thankful for because it was a great Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to y'all. Hope you guys had a great time with your families. So we're thankful, one, to have a game this week, and two, to have so many of our starters that we know and love to be back, between Lawrence and Skalski and Jones and Davis. All these different players were finally back this week, but heck of a game, heck of a first quarter, I guess, for Clemson versus Pitt. Final score 52-17. Honestly, Erik, you were pretty close to your prediction. Your prediction was 47-17, so I think you had this one pegged a little bit better than I did. What did you see, and how did it line up with your prediction?
Oh, so happy to have Clemson football back. Especially
right?
On Thanksgiving, 4-day weekend for me. And man, having Clemson back on the field was a big one. Last home game for these seniors. Trevor Lawrence back after 5 weeks. Huge surprise for me to have Skalski and Mike Jones and Tyler Davis back.
Yeah.
It was almost like a prerequisite to think Christmas, I was just so excited. And then to come out and have a huge first quarter. I talked about it on our pregame show that I really felt like we needed to come out, make a statement. I felt like after all this time out that Brent Venables, Tony Elliott, Dabo would have this team ready and prepared after FSU's whatever that was last week. These players were going to come out on fire and ready to play, and we did that. We hung 31 on them in the first quarter. How many? I can't even count how many interceptions we had. I ran out of fingers on my hand counting it. Super excited about this game. There's definitely things that we're going to talk about throughout this show that we need to fix and still work on, and that's kind of a work in progress, and that's the way we always are. Notre Dame won against UNC on Friday, so it looks like the matchup's going to be us in the ACC championship in 3 weeks on the 19th of December.
Grab your popcorn now, ladies and gentlemen, because that's going to be a heck of a game. Honestly, you had, I think, a little bit more faith in the Tiger team. I thought Trevor would show a little more rust just because he hadn't played in so long. I knew he'd be without Ngata and Latson, and I wasn't expecting 4 turnovers on defense. I wasn't expecting Davis and Skalski to play. A lot of the stuff I'd seen was that it was going to be maybe a week or two for Skalski, and Davis was just kind of ambiguous on the injury report. I had it being 37-29. I thought they'd score a little more. We'd be held a little bit less. But, 37, we put up 31 in the first quarter. So, again, great start. We're talking about, what we're thankful for and us being happy it's Christmas. I'm sure Brent Venables is looking out at his defense and being like, we finally have most of our pieces. Now, Darian Kendrick was still held out of this game. I didn't realize it until midway through the first quarter. When I was looking at all the interceptions, I'm like, well, I'm surprised Darian Kendrick doesn't have one. I look up, it's like he's not out there. We learned later on that he was withheld for a suspension issue. But looking at this game, the announcers were talking about it at the very end. But this is the first time, from a defensive line standpoint, we had 6 sacks in the game. This is the first time we've had Xavier Thomas, 5-star, Tyler Davis, Brian Brzee, all available for the same game. Because Xavier Thomas missed the first half, and then and they played the whole game as well. We've just had people going in and out with injury. I know they both played for a little bit against Notre Dame, but for them to start and finish the game, this has been the first time. So just from an injury standpoint, we're just in a so much better place than we were just 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and we've been talking all season about Tyler Davis. We never really knew he was dealing with that ankle injury. We didn't really know when he was going to come back. We also didn't really know what kind of impact he would have on the game. They were always talking big about him. We knew that he was a big player. But watching him play in this game at defensive tackle, he was disrupting. He was in the backfield. The defense, 6 sacks in this game, season high, and a lot of that was attributed to Tyler Davis taking up 2 or 3 defenders, or 2 to 3 blockers on the O-line, and giving Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry, Brian Brzee all the ability in the world to take a one-on-one matchups to the quarterback. We talk about this defense flying around. 4 interceptions for a QB in Pitt that had only thrown 7 all year. We were getting pressure on the quarterback. He was throwing them up, and our DBs were playing tight defense, which was great, and they were getting their eyes on the ball. But I have to say, we're still dealing with injuries. Sheridan Jones, starting cornerback, was out. Landon Zanders, starting safety, was out. Jalen Phillips, safety, was out. So, and there were some young guys out there. Charleston's out there. So I was really happy to see Brent Venables coach up this defense, get some of these young players that are starting for the first time in a big game like this after weeks and weeks not playing. He coached them up, and we were ready to play, and that's really exciting going down the stretch. Like you said, Kendrick wasn't even playing, and getting some of these guys back, hopefully for the ACC championship game, and having a healthy roster is going to be a big deal down the stretch.
Yeah, I hate saying this because I don't want to make excuses or anything, but every time Davis or Skowski or even Andrew Booth made a big play, I was like, oh, we didn't have him against Notre Dame at the end of the game. Like, we didn't have him. We were talking about Tyler Davis. The first pick, Tyler Davis gets pressure, puts his hands up, gets a tip ball, and it's a pick going the other way. Just making impact. Like, these are impact players making impact plays. It was great to have them back. 4 interceptions. You talked about that. Forcing 2 fumbles. What I love to see is the 16 yards rushing for Pitt. The last time we saw the Clemson run defense, yes, it was banged up, and yes, it was against a good Notre Dame rushing attack. Pittsburgh is nowhere close to that. But giving up 16 rushing yards was a great start for this team, setting a great standard there. A lot of that was the game script. You get down 31-0 the first quarter, you're not really going to be pounding the rock probably much for the rest of the game. You're going to be trying to throw to get back in it. But talking about throwing to get back in it, Kenny Pickett only had 200 yards passing. So great defensive performance across the board, and just excited to see this defense moving forward. Hopefully we can get DK back next week, and we get some of these starters back even next week against a big matchup with Virginia Tech. But we gotta love how the defense came out, set the tone, really just kept handing gifts to our offense, not only in the first quarter, but the entire game long. The only disappointing part of the defense was coming out probably at halftime to start the third quarter, and Trevor Lawrence fumbles the ball, and immediately they get that touchdown on the other end. But all in all, I mean, we're handing out grades or something. That is an A performance from the Clemson defense.
Yeah, we'll get to the second half in a little bit here. But, we talked about how excited we were for this defense and this young defense playing big, all those turnovers, holding Pittsburgh to, really no offense all day. But on offense for Clemson, Trevor Lawrence coming back. I know we talked about it. You were a little bit concerned. I mean, it's been 5 weeks since he's played. It's been a whole month, a calendar month, since he has taken the field on a Saturday to play football. And, thought he might be rusty. I thought he might come out and just try to do too much, trying to make up for lost time. And he did not. I mean, he played within the game plan. He went through his reads. I mean, his passes were some of the best I've seen of him ever, really. I mean, he was putting the ball exactly where he wanted it. And he threw for 403 yards and 2 touchdowns. 1 yard short of his record of 404 yards. So he's really locking down that number 1 and number 2 record for himself. But he was 26 for 37. I mean, man, if he was in all game, I predicted after the first quarter that we might go up 120-0 because he was playing so well. So it was really exciting to see him back out there. It was really exciting to see Powell step up. I mean, he stepped up all year when he had to. I mean, that one-handed catch, deep shot where he was tackled, shoelace tackle on the 1 yard line. We want him to get in. But super excited for Powell to step up. I mean, he stayed. This is his 5th year at Clemson. He stayed all those years behind all those other amazing wide receivers that we've had. And now this is his 3rd 100-yard reception game in a row, joining the leagues of Sammy Watkins and DeAndre Hopkins as the only Clemson receivers to have 300-yard games in a row.
Not bad company, right?
Not at all.
No, not at all. Those are two first-round picks right there. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, I think maybe we kind of didn't acknowledge the chip that might be on his shoulder. Whatever it was, I don't think anyone's come underneath as much scrutiny as Trevor Lawrence has this year, just like being the face of college football, and he handles everything with such great poise. But this is the first time in Clemson history that Clemson has had back-to-back 400-yard passers, and I love the fact that it's with 2 different quarterbacks. Basically, our future and our present doing it in that consecutive order. Cornell Powell, you mentioned it. It's just so happy for that guy. He's never been a lack of talent or a lack of size. It's just, look at the litany of players that we've had go to the NFL. It's just too many people that he's been stuck behind. He finally gets the opportunity to do the injury. And, hey, when you have an opportunity, you have to seize it. That's what he's done. Be interested to see if or when he does get drafted, because he has elevated his draft stock this year. Kudos for him. I want to kind of go into the rushing attack more than anything. We've talked a lot about the running attack from Clemson. We had 145 yards in this game. I wouldn't necessarily say that's good or bad. Would have preferred seeing how we were up 31-0 to maybe run the ball a little bit more. To be able to weigh on that. I don't think that was necessarily part of the game plan. I think Clemson saw that they had a weak secondary and wanted to exploit that the entire game. But this is a Pitt defense that was averaging less than 100 yards a game on the ground. Virginia Tech the previous week, who's the number one running ACC team, they basically rushed for the same amount of yardage. It's nice to see, but again, Travis Etienne for his career is averaging over 7 yards a carry. He was still at 5.3, which is his season average. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a huge improvement. Dabo Sweeney talked afterwards. They thought it looked great and everything. Maybe this is one of those things we can't really tell. It was a tougher opponent, but it seems to have been the exact same result.
Our rushing attack.
New favorite segment, right? It's just every week talking about the rushing attack.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, Travis Etienne came out with fresh legs. He looked like he was running angry when he'd hit the hole. He looked like he wanted to take guys' heads off. Unfortunately for him, it seems to me that our Clemson O-line coaches might have fixed the blocking to get these holes open, but they have not fixed the blocking in terms of getting to the second level, which is huge in the run game. Because basically what I saw all game was Travis Etienne hitting the hole and two linebackers sitting right there ready to tackle him. And as good as Etienne is and as good as he is spinning and blocking, getting off blocks, when there's two guys ready to wrap you up, I'm sorry, all you can do is hit them as hard as you can and fall forward, and there's your 5.3 yards that carry that he had. Sure, did we open some holes towards the end zone where he walked right in? Yes. But again, those are in 3-yard situations where those linebackers don't really have a shot at really making that tackle. So while we fixed some part of the game, I feel like, I don't know that we've really fixed our rushing attack, which is going to bring me to my big topic of the day, which is Tony Elliott. And to me, Tony Elliott is one of the best callers at specific plays. He can draw up plays that I stand up and applaud when I'm watching. That fake shovel pass to Brandon Galloway where he tiptoed down the sideline and unfortunately had his heel step out. I mean, beautiful play call. He's had some amazing play calls or play action. That jump pass to Etienne and against LSU in the championship game. Beautiful play call. But I have never seen Tony Elliott call a complete game from start to finish. We go up 31-0, and then we're just stagnant. And to me, that's not talent. That's not Trevor not throwing the ball well, because we all saw him throwing the ball well. That's not Etienne having a bad day. That's play calling. There was multiple times this weekend when we were in 3rd and short, and he drew up the QB draw right up the middle, as if we still had Taj Boyd or something, which we don't. We have the number 1 running back in the league, and we have the number 1 passing quarterback in the league. So run the ball or throw the ball. QB draw, it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, listen, the QB draw is a thorn in the side of many Clemson fans. We've just seen it for a decade, and Taj Boyd up the middle, Deshaun Watson up the middle. We would lament that, and thankfully we've seen it less with Trevor Lawrence, just because, dude, just don't run Trevor Lawrence up the middle. We saw, I think there was a linebacker for Pitt got ejected on a tough targeting call. But I mean, you saw Trevor Lawrence's body turn around. I mean, it was a hard hit. You don't necessarily want him doing that. Trevor Lawrence may be in space. He can slide, he can not, he can choose, but maybe not that direction. And the way it works is the linebackers just aren't going to withdraw enough on a 3rd and 3 to really vacate that area. Again, interesting decision, and I get what you're saying from that standpoint. There's just a couple times where you mentioned it, beautiful plays, but other times they're scratching your head. These 3rd and shorts, our 3rd down offense was started off great this year and it's been tilting a little bit. That's something that we're normally good at. And some of it is our lack of a rushing attack, but give yourself options. A QB draw is not options. Do a rollout where you have a quick out from a wide receiver and you can hit him, or Trevor Lawrence can take it and run it. You need to put it in his hands where he has options in space and he can read, not just go up the middle and follow your running back who's not going to necessarily be big enough to blow a hole open for you.
Yeah, I agree completely. Read option plays, just something where, heck, Trevor Lawrence threw for 403 yards. You need 3 yards. 3 yards. Let him throw the ball. Yeah. Trust your quarterback that he's going to make the right decision. And if it's not there, he'll tuck it and run. Like that QB draw is still on the table on a pass play. Like there's nothing stopping him from vacating the pocket and picking up those yards with his legs. But at least let him make that decision. Let your playmakers make decisions and don't put them in positions where they could get hurt for no reason when you're up 40-0 at that point in the game. I mean, it's crazy to me. But elsewhere.
Yeah, I know. Well, you and I are both, I think we're echoing the same thing. You need to have options on a third down play, whether, especially once you get in short to the goal line, you need to have options. A quarterback draw gives you zero options. The reason why we want to talk about options is because there's talent all over the field. We saw that with E.J. Williams, talking about a great story. I know they talked about during the game itself, wearing 39 for his dad, the age that he actually passed away. Great to see E.J. Williams get his first start, catch his first touchdown pass as well. He had a great game. And then Amari Rodgers, I don't know, between him and Cornell Powell, he's just being unsung heroes throughout this year, what they've been able to do. I mean, Amari Rodgers is a great player, but he set a career high for a number of catches. So between him and Powell, they're just setting career highs, it seems like, every week.
Yeah, and Amari Rodgers is another one of those players that just puts the team on his back, makes plays. He reminds me of a Hunter Renfrow that knows when he has to make a catch. I mean, made that incredible diving catch backwards away from where he was going to help out Trevor, who had to just throw it up because he was under pressure. Props to Amari. I hope that his draft stock keeps rising because he keeps making incredible plays, and he really shows that on the field. I mean, Pitt came into this game third in the ACC on defense in yards allowed, 311 yards per game. Clemson put up 349 by half. And I mean, that was the game, right? I mean, we can nitpick here and there, and we're going to do that because that's what we do. But the game was over by half. We had put it away, and Clemson does what Clemson does. Second half, take the starters out, let the players play. We played 94 players in this win. And it was incredible to see Dabo in those final minutes trying to figure out the way to get his seniors and his super seniors touches on the ball, run those screen plays, and everyone's like, why are they running that? And he's running that just to get that senior player a touch, a catch. They're trying to get Rencher in the end zone in that last couple of plays where they're trying to run him in. And, Pitt doesn't take, Narduzzi doesn't have any issue with that because he knows what he's doing. He's just trying to get his players. He's not trying to run up the score. He's just trying to get his players these memorable moments. And that's just how good of a coach he is, that it's more about the players. The game is what the game is. But allowing these players to play in these big games, have these moments, is really special for this team.
I mean, 20 years from now, this Pitt team's not going to remember if this wide receiver they never heard of, has an extra catch on him. But that wide receiver will remember, and that running back will remember that they had. They actually were able to play in their last game, in Death Valley, when they've contributed to this team, even though you may not see it out on the field inside. They've contributed to a team for 4, maybe 5 years, depending if they're redshirted. It was really great to see, and one thing that I do love that Dabo does is he does honor those who are underclassmen, like a junior, but he does not expect back the following year. So that was great to see as well. Travis Etienne, I do want to talk about for a second. We talked about his production, but they mentioned it on the broadcast, and I do want to reiterate because it's something that you and I have talked about off air, but just not on air, and about the business decision he made to come back this year. And so it was always portrayed by ESPN and others that he forego millions of dollars in order to come back and get his education. And that the second part is true. He wanted to get that education. He's foregoing millions of dollars this year, but to make more on the back end. If he does solidify as a first round pick, which we won't know until April and the picks actually come out, but he's elevated his draft stock as a receiver. So if he's able to get first round, he gets millions of dollars more being a first round pick than he will being a second round pick. It's a big gap between that, even within the first round. If he goes 15 to 20 or something, that is better than going 25 to 32. And with the current trend of running backs, you saw Ezekiel Elliott and a couple running backs get big paydays, but that's not the norm. Most of the time, they're on these rookie running back contracts for 5 years, and they're not getting paid afterwards. So if you get your money up front, if you're able to be a first-round pick, I mean, he is going to end up making tens of millions of dollars more because he stayed and elevated his draft stock. And that's not something you see anybody doing in college football, especially not the running back position. So a great career move by Travis Etienne.
Yeah, and all the Clemson fans are curious to see if Trevor Lawrence will make a career move too by not going to the 0 and probably 11 Jets after this weekend in the first pick of the NFL draft.
the Jets will just be there next year. Like Trevor Lawrence, hey, if he just dodges out of this, well, they're just going to pick up somebody else, and they're going to be right back here next year. So you're going to avoid them this year, but it doesn't matter. What, you get to go to the Jaguars next year instead or something? Like, dude, a terrible team will draft you. Ask Joe Burrow. I mean, he carried that team on his back and blew out his knee, but you're going to go to a terrible team. I'm sorry, man. That's the curse of being ridiculously good.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And Trevor Lawrence, he with this win this weekend, he tied the QB win record with Taj Boyd and Deshaun Watson at Clemson with 32 wins over his career. And this senior class is undefeated at home. It's the first time Clemson's ever had a senior class undefeated. They won the national championship in 2018. Some of the super seniors were still on the squad in 2016 when they won the national championship. So, I mean, one of the biggest senior classes for Clemson. Huge props to them. And like you said, those 94 players that we played and those guys that we got on the field that were seniors playing in their last game, they contributed to this team, whether you know their name or not, because there's so much that happens off the field. I mean, the game is 3-4 hours on a Saturday, and they're putting in work 7 days a week to prepare for that. And these guys deserve huge props for sticking with the team and contributing in other ways if they weren't the stars on the football field.
Yeah, Dabo always talks about, the best is yet to come. I feel like every year we heard about, it seems like for a decade, every year we've heard this is the winningest, senior class in program history. We've just heard that since about, 2014, 2015 or something. And to get to a point now where every year it feels like we're at the pinnacle, even last year, the year before, when we won the national championship, we feel like we're at the pinnacle. This team was undefeated at home. That is insane that you were perfect at home. All the teams that are coming through, how many game days we've had, and to be perfect in something over the course of 4 years just makes you excited for the future of this program, because they're building off of what the last few classes have done. Hopefully they're leaving it in even better hands for them moving forward. Like, I don't know what else there is left to do, but every year it's just something else that's checked off the list. It really is incredible. This is the last home game of the year. Thankfully, that was what he was talking about. We didn't pick up any injury designations from this game, so I think for the most part, everyone got out of there relatively unscathed. One thing I do want to talk about, because it relates back to Clemson, is that Virginia and Florida State, they canceled their game morning of, kind of sort of same situation in Clemson, except for it was a COVID test within Florida State that ended up positive. Because now Florida State has 2 games they need to reschedule. They don't have the time for that. If Virginia is more willing to play Florida State, they will reschedule it for that game. It means that it's almost 0% chance that Clemson and Florida State will end up playing this year. So Florida State, you got your wish. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. That's your Thanksgiving gift from Clemson, I guess.
What can you do? What can you do? And I don't think, even if they didn't play this weekend, I don't think Dabo was ever going to reschedule that game after how pissed off he was. Yeah. But kind of going back to what you just said, we've been talking about next man up forever at Clemson, it seems like, in Dabo's 12 years in this program. And we always get little tastes of it at the end of these games when we're up big. And DJ Uiagalelei, again, on 4th and 5, hits a perfect pass to Lindsay out of the backfield for a touchdown on a 4th down play. I mean, he's got an incredible arm, and I think he's going to really grow with this program. And I'm excited to see what he does for his next 3-4 years that he's going to be with the program. And a lot of these young guys, Frank Lattin, you mentioned DJ Williams. It's the best is still yet to come, and we'll continue to say that until it's not. But excited to see it. Excited to see it move forward. But kind of moving down the stretch for this year's team, we mentioned Notre Dame pulled off a big win against UNC on Friday. It seemed early on that UNC might be able to hold up in there. It looked like Notre Dame found some ways to tweak their game plan and shut them down going into the second half. But it looks like it's going to be a pretty, maybe a 2 versus 3 matchup in the ACC championship. And hoping that both squads are healthy going into that game. Really excited for that one coming up in a couple of weeks.
I'm trying to think of a more, I want to say a memorable matchup, like what the game was, in Notre Dame earlier this year. And now, that game already felt like a 10 out of 10. Now you have Trevor Lawrence back. You have, Clemson at full strength. You have a trip to the national championship online. You have ACC championship. I think we're 5 years in a row. having won that, it's just this game is going. I mean, the last game was the biggest game of the year. I cannot imagine what the next one is going to be. As long as Clemson and Notre Dame take care of business with their final games, it's just one of the biggest games I think college football will have in recent memory. All I want is for it to live up to hype, and then obviously for Clemson to win it and revenge it. But depending on how some of these games go, it may end up that both get in. I don't think that'll happen. I think the winner will get in, the loser will be out, just based on how the scheduling works. But I'm just excited for this game. I mean, it's right around the corner. You're talking about it's 2 weeks away. I'm excited for what it's going to be. I want to go around the horn a little bit for what's happened in some of these different conferences, because we did talk about it a few weeks ago, the opportunity of these conferences getting multiple teams in. The Big Ten, with Wisconsin losing last week, they were kind of a darling in the eyes of the college football playoff community. They lost to Northwestern. Northwestern goes and lays an egg against a pathetic Michigan State team. So now the only undefeated team left in the Big Ten is Ohio State. So basically, there's real no chance of two teams from the Big Ten coming in now and making it into college football playoff. It's Ohio State. I think it's Ohio State and everybody else as far as that division. I don't expect them to lose a game, but Ohio State should be the only team coming out of that division now.
Northwestern, made that big showing, made it on the list of everyone that no one saw them coming, and just like that, they're out of it. But I think the big news right now out of the Big Ten is Ohio State. Surprisingly, they canceled this weekend's game. I mean, we knew that Ryan Day was tested positive. We knew that he didn't travel with the team, but they were supposed to play the Fighting Illini this weekend, and they were scheduled to play. And then once again, COVID kind of took the game off the plate, which leaves Ohio State kind of in a tricky spot. They've only played 4 games, and you need to play 6 per the Big Ten guidelines to make it in the championship game. They have 2 games left scheduled on their schedule with Michigan and Michigan State, and they know that they need to play them, but they also know that this COVID is real, and it's stopping games, whether people want to play them or not. And there's a big argument. If for some reason they don't play one of those games, I don't feel like the Big Ten Conference should change their restrictions on who makes it the Big Ten Championship just because the big bad Ohio State can't get the number of games they want. Because on top of it all, you got to play a whole season. Like if you don't play the whole season, I don't care if you're the number 1 team or not. The whole point of the season is to play it. If not, we could just skip to the playoffs right from the beginning, whether you're the number 4 team or not, right? Like there's teams like Clemson that right now has played 9 games, and Ohio State has played 4. I mean, and I think to me, they should not, just because of what they've done, they should not be a shoo-in to the playoff if they cannot go to their championship game.
And that's why the College Football Playoff Committee, but I think Clemson had 3 and Ohio State behind them because, hey, Clemson, you may have a loss, but you've played twice as many games as Ohio State has. And to your point, COVID is kind of going through the Ohio State program. I think they were going on the side of caution this week, and they're just trying to shut it down. But the crazy thing about this virus, it's not necessarily up to the one program to shut down. What if Michigan and Michigan State end up having outbreaks? What if Northwestern ends up finding out that they've had some cases? Now Michigan State has to shut down their facilities. They can't play the game. Like it's a crazy world that we're living in where you don't get to control your own destiny as far as if you get to play the game. So even Ohio State gets this under control, every week we are seeing a team pop up, or not just a team, dozens of teams pop up to having these issues and contract tracing, shutting people down. Denver Broncos are playing a game today without a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback because they're all in quarantine, and it's a crazy game, or a crazy world that we're living in. So therefore, I get what you're saying, because Ohio State may end up going to college football playoff without even making it to the championship, not because they're not good enough, but because of who knows? There's still so much left to be decided. But we'll move on to the SEC for the time being. Not really much to talk about here because Alabama torches what I think is a pathetic Auburn team. Why they ranked in the top 25. We know it's just SEC bias. Bo Nix has been atrocious this year. That defense has been average. I'm not saying much more besides Mac Jones is unfortunately inching closer, I think, to the Heisman. He's putting up gaudy numbers, and in a season where not everyone gets to play a full schedule, you saw Trevor Lawrence out a little bit. He's just going to have the best numbers in the game. We're at the end of the season. And then A&M is who I really want to talk about because they keep winning. They're not going to make it to the SEC championship game. They're going to have that one loss to Alabama, who I think everyone is saying, hey, they're basically the best team in the country right now. So, if Ohio State makes it in, and then let's say, Notre Dame versus Clemson. If Clemson wins, it's going to be a conversation. Do you put Notre Dame or an A&M in? I think Notre Dame will get that nod. But if Clemson loses to Notre Dame, I think Texas A&M is going to replace Notre Dame. Is that probably that fourth slot in there? I don't think they're going to put Clemson in at that point.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing too is there's a lot of games left, right? The team that we haven't mentioned yet is Florida, and another Heisman contender is Kyle Trask. To me, Florida has a chance to upset Alabama in that SEC championship game. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the way that Florida's been playing, they're probably the only team right now in the SEC that has a chance to do that. And we know when you play football, anything can happen. So to me, what it really comes down to, I think A&M's out of it. They have been winning. I don't know that their strength of schedule really holds up, though. To me, it's kind of interesting because it kind of lines up to be, 2 versus 3, Clemson versus Notre Dame in the ACC championship game. Just playing devil's advocate and saying that Clemson wins and Notre Dame's out of it. You got the SEC championship game, 1 versus probably 5 in Florida. If Alabama wins or Florida wins, where do those teams kind of end up? I mean, like you said, it'll kind of play out. But there's definitely talk about 2 ACC teams or 2 SEC teams in this year, with the Pac-12 not doing so hot. They might have wanted COVID to cancel their seasons this year because it has not been good. Oregon loses again. They didn't look good last week. They didn't look good this week. USC wins, so there's an outside chance, but they only have, I think, 5 games under their belt as well. I don't think they've played a ranked team yet either. So, it's kind of coming down to the Power 3, ACC, SEC, Big Ten, to put these teams into the playoff. And then you've got outside the Power 5 and Cincinnati and BYU, who we kind of saw the playoff committee rank them somewhat low in our opinion. And because of that, their strength of schedule on the rest of the season, I don't know that it's going to be enough to get them in, even with some losses from the teams above them.
No, I can't imagine. Oregon, that was their first loss of the year. They just have looked so pedestrian throughout it. They needed to have a perfect season. They needed a big matchup against USC at the end of the year, and switching it from Oregon to USC, unfortunately, it doesn't help USC. Both USC and Oregon needed a strong opponent to win in the Pac-12 title game in order to jump into this conversation. Pac-12 has a lot of issues from a vision standpoint, which is their games are always super late. They're on the West Coast, so we don't get to see them a lot. They started after everybody else has already started, so not really much talking about. Oregon had some opt-outs. It just hasn't been a conference that's gotten a lot of attention. Oregon going down only hurts the matter. So for the time being, it looks like it's a 3-horse race from a conference standpoint. I would love to sit here and talk about Cincinnati and BYU, but unless there's some sort of craziness happen, you just mentioned how with Notre Dame and Clemson and Florida and Alabama playing these conference championships, it really there's just not enough chaos that can probably happen at this point. There's not enough losses to really rack up that'll probably open up an opportunity for them to jump and come on in. And now they just don't have the opponents left. SMU lost this last week, so if they go to the AAC championship game, that's not going to be an impressive win for Cincinnati. So really, this week did narrow things down because the amount of opportunities there were is getting narrower and narrower. It's going to end up being these 3 conferences, not even 3. It's going to be Ohio State, but then SEC, ACC, who gets 2 teams in essentially.
Yeah. And I want to touch on one thing that you brought up a little bit earlier, which is the Heisman race. And I actually think it's going to be a pretty interesting year with the Heisman because everyone that I kind of hear and talk with, it sounds like someone different is the front runner. You talked about Mac Jones and how he keeps inching up and playing these. He's playing at a high level. Alabama's talent helps him do that. But there's arguments that he's not even the best player on that team. Their running back Najee Harris is. So how can you be the Heisman winner if you're not even the best player on your team? Kyle Trask has made a huge jump in the Heisman rankings, and he's played huge. in the last couple of weeks here. But what I keep going back to, and I think what frustrates me and probably all the Clemson fans out there, is you talk to anybody, any analyst, any network, and they talk about Trevor Lawrence as the best player in the league.
Yep.
They talk about him going number 1 overall. They talk about him not leaving because he's going to go to the number 1 overall and go to the Jets. I don't understand how a trophy that embolizes the best player in the league doesn't go to the player that everyone thinks is the best player in the league just because he doesn't have stats or a big win or is the trophy not supposed to be to the best player in the league? Am I missing something?
Yeah. Let's say you're a Kyle Trask or a Mac Jones, supporter or something like that, you don't want it to be a popularity contest. We've got more touchdown passes and more yards. I would say, Trevor Lawrence, if you get that win against Notre Dame in the ACC championship game, I would say hey, there you go, bring it home. Everyone knows that Trevor Lawrence name, the brand of Trevor Lawrence is just so big. Unfortunately, you're going to have Kyle Trask and Mac Jones in the SEC championship game going against each other, and they could both have fantastic games, both elevate their stock as well, which is unfortunate because I feel like whatever Trevor Lawrence does over here, Mac Jones and Kyle Trask are going to do over here as well. Trevor Lawrence, is he the best player on his own team? You got Travis Etienne right there, the best back in college football, hands down. So it's tough. I mean, to me, it's simple. The best player coming into this season was Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence gave us the opportunity to even have a college football season. Trevor Lawrence plays, 2 or 3 quarters of football. All these other guys, play the entire time, and they rack up stats. We talked about it on a few shows ago that's an issue that Clemson has. We like to build depth. We don't play for awards and ceremonies. We play to win championships, and depth is a key part of that. A key part of championships. We saw with DJ having to come in and save our season, going 1-1, and giving us an opportunity to even play for the ACC championship game. If DJ had never seen the field before Boston College, does he go out and throw for 300 and whatever yards? So it's helped us. I would like for us to get a Heisman Trophy winner because Deshaun Watson, I think, got robbed of it a few years ago, and there's never been a clear decision on who the best player is in college football. It's Trevor Lawrence. How are people going to vote, though? Yeah, and unfortunately, I think there is this bias towards stats, towards having those big Heisman moments, right? Like Des Howard throwing up the Heisman because he knew he was going to win it because he just had such a big game. But at the same time, we're talking about the best player in the league. And does the best player in the league have to play for a team that needs them to carry the team like Kyle Trask is doing right now? Maybe. Maybe there are those weird kind of things about the trophy that are kind of, unsung, untold secrets about who people vote for. But if that's the case, that's what it should be about then. I don't have any issue with any of those players winning the Heisman. I don't truly care. I'm kind of on Dabo's camp about building depth. Let's win championships. Let's have fun. Let's build players. Let's build good people that are going to go on in life. I mean, we're talking about college kids here. But I just think it's comical that we're talking about, everybody talks about how Trevor Lawrence is the best player in the country, best player in the league, number 1 pick overall, maybe the best quarterback to ever come out of college football into the pros. I think, his draft grade right now is a 97 in QB, and Andrew Luck was a 99, but still, I mean, it's crazy to me that I feel like I haven't even heard him in the conversation in recent weeks. No, it's going to be interesting to see how they end up evaluating because, listen, the easy option, who's got more yards, who's got more touchdowns, end of story. It's going to be if you want to apply that knowledge, then you don't have to think about, all right, just whoever does that. But everyone is going to be playing different amounts of games, except for Kyle Trask and Mac Jones probably have played the same amount. I think one Florida game got canceled, but I'm guessing one Alabama game has as well. We'll see. I'm hoping for a Trevor Lawrence win this year just because, again, best player in the country, especially if he gets his team to the college football playoff. If he loses against Notre Dame, honestly, I get it at that point in time. If one of those other teams, which they would, Kyle Trask or Mac Jones, is able to get over that hump, make it to the college football playoff championship, I would understand that. But if he wins against Notre Dame and has a great game in doing so and is the reason his team gets over that hump, maybe he can cement it with that right there. Absolutely. Well, hey, we got one regular season game left, Virginia Tech next week. No.
I know it ends the year. It was sad this weekend we didn't get to play South Carolina. That's always a marquee game that we love. A rivalry that we love to watch. Hopefully that gets rescheduled and back on our schedule for next year. But Virginia Tech next week, got to close out, got to win, got to make it to the ACC championship game. Look for our pregame video on Thursday. We'll preview that matchup. Again, help us out, like, subscribe. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely.
We're just trying to bring you the best content that we can about Clemson football.
And before we leave, I just want to give a shout out to George. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We could not beat up on South Carolina this year. Thank you for taking over that brotherly role and beating up on South Carolina by 4+ touchdowns. So I know we weren't able to do it. We would have loved to have been able to. Georgia, thank you for doing that for us. We'll send you some goodies for Christmas. But like, subscribe. We'll see you guys on Thursday, and go Tigers.
Go Tigers.